Okay, so I've just put 2 screws in with a standard cordless drill. Again, what I was mentioning, that these 2 screws are done incorrectly. They're too far down, and they've broke through the paper. So like I said, if you're going to use a regular cordless drill or a regular drill, there is adapters that you can get at a hardware store to turn your cordless drill into a screw gun, which will stop the screws flush, and then you've got your drywall installed correctly. So now I'm just going to take some measurements for the back wall here and begin to install that drywall. 41 3/4. 78.5. Should be my finished 2 pieces for the back wall and the cubby area there. So now that I've got my 2 pieces of drywall cut for this back wall, I've realized that there's no backing stud here to hold the drywall on either side. You can see it's not here as well. It makes a lot more sense not to cut this plastic and get a piece of studding in there. You rarely are able to seal the plastic as well as it would have been before. So what I like to do is, in areas that I run into this situation, I've got a light gauge angle iron and I've cut it to the floor to ceiling height. Going to install this surface mounted on this stud, and then that gives me this edge of the metal track to screw the drywall into. Okay, so got my pieces cut. My ceiling board is in. When I'm starting with the walls, I like to start with the top piece and push it up tight, creating a nice straight edge here, which you'll notice as I'm fastening it together. Got my pencil. Gonna mark the studs to the ceiling. Try not to use felt pen up on the drywall. It might still show through when you go to paint. Got a couple screws. Okay, so you can see my piece is in here nice and tight. You can also see that I've got it pushed up as tight as I can to the ceiling. So I'll grab with one hand, pull it up as tight as I can, get a screw in the bottom. There we go. And then I'll follow the same thing that I did in the ceiling. 4 screws on the center studding, 5 on the edge. Use my indicator lines up at the top here. I know where that stud is. Just show another thing. Where's that level? There. Okay. So I'm able to tell where the studs are because I've been doing it for a little while, so I can just mark at the top, mark at the bottom, and hit them. If you're a little bit new at drywalling, you're probably going to want to use your straight edge and connect the lines so that you can get nice straight screw lines without missing. Alright, so this piece is finished. Okay, so I've got my last piece cut for the bottom. Just going to use my pencil, mark the studs onto the floor. I can see the top of the stud here. Okay. Now, I've left it off the floor a little bit because you don't want to cut it too tight and try to fit it in there and cause it to break. You'll just end up with not a straight edge. And we've got some baseboards going on that will cover that. So this gap here, you want to close completely before you start screwing. So take a crowbar, put it underneath. That joint's nice and tight. Alright, so temporarily fastened. I'm just going to finish screwing it off and we should be done this back wall. Alright, back wall complete. So I've got my pieces cut for these two walls now. I'm just going to start again by marking my studs on the ceiling and on the floor so I know where they are, and then proceed with installing this top sheet tight against the ceiling again. You can see in this wall we're going to run into two electrical boxes. I've got a drywall router that will go through hit the edge of the steel, jump to the outside, and spin around this box and cut it perfectly around. So I'll just go through that as well. Okay, so before I fasten this sheet up, I need to put some indicator points so I can stick the router bit right here without hitting this or any of the wires. Same with this box. So I'm going to measure off this back wall to center of the box, 25.5, and then from the ceiling, 35. Okay, now that I've got that temporarily attached at the ceiling, I've got my indicator points here. I'm going to get my router ready, safety equipment on, and proceed to router these openings out. Okay, so I've got my indicator point here. This is the drywall router. This is the bit that will go around the metal box to cut the drywall perfectly flush around the edges. So you begin by turning it on, pushing it tight, the drywall tight against the box, inserting it just 3/4 of an inch to not nick the wires that are inside the box. Push to the edge of the box, jump over the edge to get to the outside, and then proceed in a counterclock motion around the box. So I'm ready to begin. So you can see that that's perfectly cut around the outside of the box. I didn't stick it in too far, so I didn't nick any of the wires. So we're good to go. So ready on this one?
Yep.
Okay, so now I've got my electrical boxes cut. I'm just going to proceed with finishing screwing this off. Good?
Yeah.
Okay, now that you've got your drywall installed, it's time to take a look back at your work and make sure everything's done correctly. You've got enough screws. You get the screws that miss studs out of the wall. Gonna have to trim some of the loose paper that will be hanging around on damaged areas of the drywall. One very important thing about drywall is the screws themselves. Most of my demos, you're gonna see me use a screw gun. Screw gun is really helpful because it's got a stopper on the front that puts the screw just below flush of the paper, not breaking through the paper. If you're using a cordless drill, you might tend to run the screw in too far and break the paper, which is essentially a useless screw. So I'm just looking for that along the walls and tightening down or adding screws as necessary.